So that means that in all the Dayton regional YMCAs, that if you are a biological male who today, and that's all I have to do, I can say today, I am identifying as a woman, I can go into the women's locker room, the women's shower room, or the women's changing room. This came to light when we had one of our pastor's wives here in Xenia was in the locker room at the Xenia YMCA, and she looked over and there was a naked guy in the locker room. And so she went out to the front desk and said, hey, I don't know if you know what's going on, but there's a naked man in there. And she was informed, no, this actually is a woman, and that you shouldn't be disturbed by this at all. And so that pastor was Van Holloway.
This is insanity.
Yeah, so Van went to the local Y director and was told, no, this is the policy. He went then to the CEO of the Y. And he was expecting at least to have a case be heard or at least understand what was going on with his wife. And it was a very antagonistic meeting. Basically, he was challenged that doesn't he understand that we're, as Christians, we're supposed to be loving and caring and we're not fulfilling our responsibilities as believers, and that we're embracing this so we can reach out to the LGBTQ plus community. And then if his wife had a problem, she could go use the family changing room at the Y.
But they could use the family room too.
So their point was that's discriminatory towards an individual who has a gender identification. So.
All right, guys. So this edition of Cuckoo for Cocoa Puff World, we have to revisit a story that I did probably 2 or 3 months ago out of Ohio involving a transgender woman by the name of Darren Glines. Now, Darren Glines, again, is a transgender woman, aka a biological male, and Darren had been using the women's locker room in the YMCA. And there have been numerous complaints about Darren flashing his genitalia in the locker room as Darren was getting naked, okay, in the locker room, including a report about, this person getting undressed in front of 3 teenage girls, okay? Now, charges was brought against Darren for indecent public exposure, and now a judge has ruled that Darren is not guilty of indecent public exposure because apparently Darren is too fat to actually have their genitalia show in the locker room while naked. No, I'm not kidding. That's exactly what happened. Take a look.
Elena, thank you. And now we want to start with our other top story tonight. A transgender woman found not guilty. Now this after she was charged with public indecency because she used the women's locker room at the Xenia YMCA. Now a judge just ruled Rachel Glines didn't break any laws. And Mamie, I know you've kind of been following this story for us. You spoke with her legal team today. And what did you learn?
I did. Well, the legal team tells me that the legal team who is speaking on behalf of their client at this time tell me that they believe their client still has a target on her back despite the judge's ruling. However, they believe the right decision was made.
She's relieved. This was really weighing on her.
The attorneys representing the transgender woman charged with indecent exposure, speaking for the first time.
It was our position that the prosecution kind of tried to twist the law to fit this case into a certain mold that it just didn't fit in.
Friday, Rachel Glines was found not guilty by a Xenia Municipal Court judge. This after using the locker room that aligns with her gender identity at the Xenia YMCA. The Greater Dayton LGBTQ Center saying this is a victory.
I hope that people will think twice before bringing these kind of charges because a lot of times it's about the intent, and I don't think Rachel intended to do anything wrong.
The judge in this case ruled that there was no exposure because Glines did not show her private area in the locker room. Documents show that the executive director of the Fairborn YMCA testified, saying Glines was authorized to use the women's locker room at all YMCA facilities. I spoke with law professor Tom Hagel about the outcome in this case.
The result was correct. These are the types of issues that are going to come up constantly until the issue is resolved concerning the rights of people who are in transition.
Glines was facing 3 counts of indecent exposure for incidents that took place from September to November, one involving Janelle Holloway, who says she didn't feel comfortable with Glines using the women's locker room.
His name is Darren Glines. Yeah, I've known Darren for a lot of years. he was on my tennis team. I'll be honest, I've known him well. And I've written him a letter.
In this letter, she writes in part, "I've prayed more for you these past 6 months than I ever did the previous 22 years of knowing you. Going through these last 6 months is not something that I would have ever chosen to do, but God has been faithful to me in so many areas of life. The Holloways who were subpoenaed tell me they are disappointed by the judge's ruling."
And disgusted in some ways.
What do you say to people who believe you're being transphobic?
I strongly have to believe what the Bible teaches, that God, from the very beginning, created two genders.
For now, Glines' legal team says they are looking ahead and focusing on their client.
Are there any plans to file a lawsuit against the city?
We're not going to make any definitive comments on that. I know that we're going to look at all of her legal options moving forward and make the best decision for her.
I reached out to the YMCA of Greater Dayton. It says it is following Ohio and federal laws and anti-discrimination laws, which allow all members to access its facilities and programs. I also reached out to the city of Xenia. It says it has no comment at this time. Back to you.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, this report did not go into detail about what exactly does it mean that this person was found not guilty because they weren't actually exposed in the locker room. Well, what is meant, right, what the judge meant in detail was that this person was cleared because they could not physically flash their penis in the public space because the defendant is too fat for it to be visible. No, like seriously. You're saying that this person is so fat that there's no way that this person's penis could have actually been exposed, so therefore not guilty. Absolutely amazing stuff. We really are living in clown world, guys. So let's read about this. On April 28th, Xenia, Ohio judge David McNamee ruled that a biological male who identified as transgender, Darren Glines, could not be guilty of indecent exposure at a local YMCA because the defendant fatness covered up any signs of a penis. According to the Daily Mail, Darren Glines was found not guilty on 3 counts of indecent exposure, all 4th-degree misdemeanors, and Judge McNamee said in his ruling, quote, "There's no question that Glines was in the women's locker room. However, Glines was not charged with trespass, nor was Glines charged with being in an area of the YMCA where Glines was not supposed to be." Yeah, so basically what this judge is saying is that, well, because the YMCA allows this, and the YMCA is saying they allow it because Ohio state law requires that they do it as a part of non-discrimination, which I really don't get. I really don't understand that, okay? I'm not sure how is it discriminatory to deny biological males the right to go into women's bathrooms. I'm not sure exactly what's discriminatory about that, okay? But, you know, I'm assuming it has something to do with gender discrimination, which is why I think there are a lot of these Republican states now moving to try to specifically define gender in regards to biological sex, okay, at birth. Right, I think that's why they're moving to do that, because of these types of, you know, discrimination lawsuits that a lot of these businesses tend to face due to non-discrimination policies at the state level. Okay, and the YMCA is saying, yeah, well, we're going along with this because we have to. If we don't, then we're going to get sued. And as a result of that, again, this person is taking advantage of it. They're going into the women's locker room because they feel like they're a woman, and you know, they're taking off their clothes and exposing themselves. Now, again, the reason why this person was found not guilty was because it's not possible for them to expose themselves because their penis is being covered up by the fat, right? Like literally the stomach is so big that it's hanging over the penis. Again, it's just amazing. You can't make this stuff up. We are truly living in clown world. Quote, quite simply, the facts do not exist to support a find of guilt as charges. Glines' genitalia was not visible as a result of other portions of their body covering the same, the judge added. Wow, incredible stuff. The 3 incidents took place in a YMCA where Glines walked around naked in the women's locker room in September and November of last year, with a third happening at an unspecified time. In each instance, underage girls were in the locker room. A mother of 2 filed a police report in November and said that a biological male was using the women's locker room at the YMCA and was told by YMCA management that they could not tell the trans-identified individual not to use the female locker room. In a statement, the YMCA said that state non-discrimination laws require it to allow transgender individuals to use locker rooms, changing rooms, and bathrooms that align with their gender identity. Glines, who currently uses the first name Rachel, was authorized to use the women's locker room by the executive director of the YMCA. According to local news, complaints against Glines had dated back to 2021. During the trial, one YMCA employee, Katisha Young, said that she had to get a protective order put in place against Glines, who allegedly grabbed Young's genitals after the two went out socially for coffee. Yeah, so I guess you could say that this person would identify as a lesbian as well too, right? And that kind of alludes to a story I did about how you had a bunch of regular biological women getting upset because transgender women, basically biological men, were identifying as lesbians because they think they're women, right? So they thought that they were entitled to be able to date lesbians because lesbians are actually women. Again, it's just funny how that works. Again, I'm pretty sure this person probably identifies as lesbian, or so it seems from that little testimony there. That is interesting. That is fascinating. So again, you have this person who's allowed in the locker room, who's been accused of all types of stuff, apparently. And, the judge is basically trying to use a loophole or technicality here to try to say, well, this person is not guilty of indecent exposure because this person's too fat, right? So fat that the fat is coming to genitalia. Again, absolutely amazing stuff. I think this is a cop-out ruling. This is a ruling to try to not take a side, okay? And I'm not necessarily sure if I agree with it because I think it's more about the overall idea or the overall action of a biological man being naked in a locker room, potentially exposing themselves to biological women and girls. I think that is the problem. It doesn't matter whether or not, this person's penis was showing. It's the fact that they were naked, and the intent, so it seems, was to expose themselves. Okay, it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not they actually were exposed. I mean, technically, I guess you could argue that they can, right? Or they were. I mean, they were naked. The butt was exposed, right? But again, it's just fascinating how, again, this judge decided to kind of do a cop out here on a technicality and say, well, technically their penis wasn't out, not because they weren't naked, right? But simply because they were too fat for their penis to show. Absolutely incredible stuff. I mean, does this not give any fat man that doesn't even identify as a woman, does that give them the right to just go into women's spaces because they're fat and their penis doesn't show as a result? Amazing stuff, right? I feel like you're opening up the door to a whole lot of outcomes that are undesirable. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.